Welcome to another edition of Journey of Hope. Stories of people sharing their journey through life. Life is a journey. Each morning we wake up, we have no idea really of what lies before us. For some people, in an instant, their life is changed forever. For others, it's a process as they begin getting different types of news from a doctor or from somewhere else that's going to affect them and their family for the rest of their life. Our special guests today are Terry and Joe from the Chicago area. And they're going to share their experience of being here at Loma Linda and the experience that brought them here. Terry and Joe, it's good to have you here.
Thanks so much.
And we got people from around the world that are watching. Many people, just like you, wake up in the morning and have no idea what lies before them, like each one of us. And we want to learn a little bit about you. Tell us a little bit about your background. We'll start with you. Where are you from?
I grew up in Dearborn, Michigan. Terry and I have lived in the Chicago area since 1992.
Okay.
I am a mental health therapist. I work at a college counseling center near our house and enjoy it very much. And we are the parents of 3 adult children.
Okay. Any grandchildren?
We've got one on the way.
One on the way.
And one in heaven.
Okay. All right. Now, tell me a little bit about yourself, Terry. Where are you from?
I grew up in Detroit. We actually met in high school.
Okay, we'll find out about that in just a minute.
We've been married for 33 years, and I am a healthcare consultant.
Okay. So now, where did you go to school?
I did both my undergraduate and my master's degree in business at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor.
Okay. And where did you have your schooling?
My undergraduate is also from the University of Michigan, and my counseling degree, it's master's in counseling psychology, is from Trinity International University.
Which is located in?
In Deerfield, Illinois.
Okay. Now, so are you working in a practice or a clinic, or you have your own business? What do you?
I work in a college counseling center.
In a college. Okay. And that's which college again?
Trinity,
right
where
there.
I got my degree.
Yeah. Started. And you did all of your schooling there, and then when you graduated, where'd you go?
My first job out of business school was with the Henry Ford Health System in Detroit. I worked there as an internal consultant, helping them streamline the operations and make things work and attract patients. And then from there, I went to a large international consulting organization.
Well, so how did you get in healthcare, in consulting in healthcare?
You know, in some ways, you could argue it was an accident. My undergraduate degree is in zoology, but when I got out of business school, I was looking for a chance to, A, help people, and B, really do something that I found interesting and stimulating. And when I had the opportunity to go to Henry Ford, it absolutely fit the bill.
Really?
Yeah.
This was with a degree in zoology?
Zoology and business.
And business, okay.
Right.
And you wanted to help people. Well, that's an interesting combination.
Right.
Okay. And so then after you worked there for a little while, did you go back and do your graduate work then? Or?
No, I had my graduate degree before I started the Henry Ford Health System.
Okay. Yeah. So everything's been going fine.
Right.
You didn't tell our audience here, where did you meet?
Well,
I think that's quite an interesting story.
Yeah,
also.
we actually met in high school, but I went to an all-boys school. Joe went to an all-girls school, and
these are all-boy Catholic and all-girl Catholic.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes. And as Joe would say, they imported boys for their plays, and prom was coming up. Senior prom was coming up, and I thought, I need to meet someone to take, and so I thought, what better place than the all-girls school? And
so you were allowed to interact with
yeah,
okay.
Yeah, when we would do this spring musical, we needed young men for the male parts in the musical, so we would send
word over.
Yeah, send word over, and they would try out, and so he was in the play.
So is that how you first got acquainted?
Yes,
okay.
It was indeed.
And then did you begin dating at that point, or after you got out of high school?
We did, but a very, very quick story. The first date I asked her on, her response was no.
Oh, okay. She's selective.
Right.
Want to quantify. I mean, you're out of
Exactly.
zoology. She wanted to quantify and
Right.
qualify.
Right.
Okay. So eventually you began dating. Did
Yes.
you date in college then?
Yeah, we dated in high school. Well, the last few months of high school, took some time off, and then got back together again in college.
And if I remember correctly, you waited till you both had graduated.
Yes.
And then you
Yes.
got married. Okay. So everything's been going along fine, and then you begin having apparently a health challenge.
Yes.
Whether you recognize it as a challenge to begin, but tell us the story.
Yeah, so I've had a history of kidney stones, and last spring I began experiencing some lower back pain, which, you know, with kidney stones is not uncommon. And after drinking water for about a week, you know, upping my water intake for about a week, I still had the lower back pain. So I went to my urologist, and he said, well, we'll, you know, order an imaging study about for the x-rays, but while you're here, let's go ahead and do your annual PSA test again. And you know, shouldn't be any big deal, but we'll go ahead and do that.
Just kind of a regular thing.
Just a regular routine screening exam that, you know, I've had a number of times. And lo and behold, he calls me up a few days later and says, we have a problem. Your PSA's gone up from 1.7 to 2, which is where it had been bouncing around the last several years, to 6.8.
Oh, so it really took a significant jump.
Took a big jump.
Okay.
And he said, we need to get you in right away for a biopsy. And I wasn't quite comfortable with this particular physician, so I switched physicians. He put me on an antibiotic for about 3 weeks, just to make sure I didn't have some kind of infection. And repeated
Which is
the
a
test.
good point for our listening audience. I mean, if you have a jump, one of the first things that many doctors will do is say, we better put you on an antibiotic to see if it'll come down. It may be due to an infection.
Right, and I was really grateful
Sure.
With that second physician that that's what he did. And but when they retested, my PSA had gone up yet again.
After being on the antibiotic?
After being on the antibiotic, so it went up to 7.41, I think. And the urologist at that point said, given your free PSA, and I didn't even know there was such a thing as free PSA, but given your free PSA, you only have an 8% probability of having cancer. So this is very unlikely, but to be prudent, we should double check. And so we did a biopsy, 12 sample biopsy, and 5 of the 12 samples came back showing cancer.
5 out of the 12.
Right.
Okay, so I want to know, how did this hit you?
Like a ton of bricks, really. When I went in, we spent a good hour with him, and he was, you know, very patient and kind of explained things.
I mean,
and explained
the
some
two of
options.
you did?
The two of us together,
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
And he wanted to make sure that Joe came, and you know, which I think was really a wise thing for him to do. And he really said, Terry, you have 4 options. 2 of them are surgical options, open surgery or laparoscopic surgery, and then 2 of them are radiation options, and these are both traditional X-ray. One was seeds that they implant in the prostate, and the other was external beam. And oh, by the way, I do all 4 of those procedures, and you know, I'd recommend this one for surgery and this one for radiation. And he encouraged us to take our time to make up our mind.
Which is a good point. I mean, when somebody's diagnosed, particularly with prostate cancer, generally you have time on your hands. Generally, it's slow growing, and you don't need to quickly make a decision. You need to study and make, you know, become aware of what all your options are. Let me just ask Joel a question. When he gets the diagnosis, how does this hit you?
I was scared. I did not want to be a widow. Didn't want to lose him. So I was frightened, but we both have a very strong faith, and I knew God would take care of it somehow or other.
Well, you know, I remind people that when you get the words back, you have cancer, what you're getting back is a diagnosis, not a death sentence.
Right.
But people hear you have cancer, and they think of the big C, and immediately, you know, they think of cancer, dying. Somebody told me today when they heard, I don't have long to live. And I'm trying to help our patients, as you've probably heard me say many times. When did you get the good news?
Right.
And you say, well, what good news? Well, when were you diagnosed? And then they tell me, I say, well, that's when you got the good news. Well, what do you mean good news? Well, you already had it, you didn't know it. So getting the diagnosis, you can do something about it. I mean, I was just talking to somebody recently that hadn't been in for 7 years. He had a low PSA of 4, and he was told not to worry about it. So he didn't for 7 years. And then it jumped to a 76 with a Gleason of 10, metastatic.
Oh, dear.
So if he would have got the news earlier, then he could have done something about it. So anyway, your doctor's sharing with you the different options.
Right.
Sounds like there's 4.
Yeah, so he shares those 4 options. We had a vacation planned. He said, go on your vacation. Don't worry about this. You know, think about it when you get back. Would really recommend you make up your mind in about 6 months. And he indicated he had a couple of patients who'd taken a year. And he said, not his recommendation, but
you got time.
So you have time. And, you know, just come to a thoughtful decision. We went on vacation, came back to a remodeling project at home. Things are going on at work, and it was very easy for me to simply say, I don't want to deal with this. And really it was denial. I didn't know it at the time, but it was denial. I just didn't want to deal with the fact that I had cancer.
Joe, did you know he was in denial?
I knew that he was putting it way on the bottom of his priority list, and
he's got a priority list, doesn't he?
he's
got a things to do list.
He sure does.
How many's on that list?
Something like 250 items
and
on the
always
list.
about 250.
Right. Yes.
And all of a sudden,
and this was item
it was
251.
going down to the very bottom.
Yes.
Right. So were you remaining quiet during this time and just kind of letting him make up his mind, or?
Well, I was trying to encourage him to start thinking about what he wanted to do and start doing some research. I knew that we would have a lot of research to do because from what the doctor had told us, all of the options that he laid out for us had some pretty undesirable side effects.
Sure.
And we didn't like that. So we wanted to do some more research and try to figure out, was there anything else out there that would make more sense than those 4 options.
You're doing, both of you are doing research, and you're kind of putting it down to the bottom. You don't like really the side effects, from what I understand.
Yeah,
that's kind of what pushing the thing down to the bottom of the totem pole.
That's exactly right. I mean, the physician said you have an 8% chance of having cancer. Well, then I have cancer, and he says, well, you know, the side effects predominantly are impotence and incontinence. And he said, you know, on average, you know, 50-50 for both of them. He said, now in his case, you know, his track record was better. It was 25-25. But I'm thinking, okay, 25-25 for each of those. But it was only 8% to have cancer. These odds don't sound all that good to me.
Good.
And it really was the side effects that really put me off, and I was most concerned about. And I remember at one point saying to Joe, in some ways, I'd rather not know.
Yeah.
Than have to face those side effects.
So what
didn't agree
what
with that,
happened to change things?
You know, I think as time went on, and you know, Joe began to encourage me to look into this, and really, I had a number of people praying for me, and I think in the end, that's really what made the difference is people praying for me, and then I just said, okay, fine, I need to look at this, and lo and behold. I discovered at least 13 different treatment options, not 4. And so there are quite a few more out there than I was first aware of.
And then what happened to kind of lead you to ended up coming to Loma Linda?
Well, really a couple of things. One is both Joe and I had different people say you ought to check out proton therapy.
Independent of each other.
Independent of each other. A friend of hers was treated down in Florida. Her father was treated down in Florida, and she said, you know, you really ought to check this out. And then an associate of mine had somebody that he knows who, in fact, is involved in financing, building new proton centers around the country right now.
Okay.
And he encouraged me to talk to him, which I did. I then talked to their chief clinician, and then I talked to their medical director. And he's the one, in fact, who referred me here to Loma Linda. But in the meantime, we got Bob Marchini's book.
Okay.
And in reading that, Bob does a wonderful job, covering all the different treatment options, dealing with the issues of side effects, dealing with some of the questions that I really had. And so...
It's a book that he wish would have been available when he was diagnosed 10 years ago, actually.
Yeah, and given my background, I tend to be pretty thorough in looking at things. And, yep. And Bob was even more thorough than I probably would have been. And so that was great, and that really gave me a lot of confidence. And then with the referral into Dr. Rossi here at Loma Linda, we thought, okay, great, this is moving forward, but then it didn't.
Did you begin talking to any of the former patients?
I did. Initially, my conversations were with patients who had some of the more well-known or more common types of treatments, so surgery or traditional X-ray radiation, and mixed bag of stories there. Most of the men were very encouraging to kind of get this dealt with, very supportive, and yet most of them had some sort of side effects, but not all.
Right. So you little by little learned about Loma Linda.
Right.
Then you came out here. When you came out here, I think you were here for the 20th anniversary.
I was indeed.
Just happened to be here at that time.
Yeah, I sent Bob an email because his description of where he was when he was diagnosed in his book very much matched where I was. And so...
In terms of staging and...
Exactly.
And the various numbers, okay?
Right. So I'd asked Bob if I could talk to him. He says, well, why don't you come on out, because you'll be able to talk to lots of men, not just me. At that point, we didn't have an appointment for a consultation yet.
So you just came out.
But no, what happened was, shortly thereafter, we got the appointment.
Before you came?
Before we came.
Okay.
And lo and behold, the appointment was available 2 days after the anniversary celebration. So I said, well, this is a 2-for-1 deal. Let's go out. When I came out, I still had a lot of questions. I came out with literally 2.5 pages of questions.
But you were still uncommitted as far as what you're going to do at that point.
Exactly. I was...
2.5 pages of questions.
I was leaning,
okay,
but I had not made a decision by any stretch of the imagination. At the anniversary celebration, I met dozens, and I mean dozens, of men who had been treated at Loma Linda, and every one of them to a person had just wonderful things to say. We had a chance to spend a good amount of time with a former cancer researcher and pathologist.
Probably Dr. Wepsick.
Dr. Wepsick, yes,
right,
who was very, very helpful. And then, so that really was very, very encouraging. And then when we sat down, had a chance to sit down with Dr. Rossi, who spent an hour and a half with me, treated me as if I was the only patient he had to see that day. It was just wonderful caring. And he answered every one of those questions on those 2.5 pages.
Wow.
We got to the end of the list. We looked at one another and said, let's do it. This is the place.
So then did you end up going back home?
We did. We went home for 3 weeks, finished up the construction project, packed up, and then drove out here.
Okay. And you've missed some, horrible weather back east, to say the least.
Well, we wouldn't say we were missing it.
You didn't miss it. Okay, tell us about your experience while you've been here at Loma Linda now.
It has been fabulous. The people here, to a person, have been just super, whether it's a receptionist or somebody in the parking lot, or the people at the Drayson Center, the exercise facility. Very warm, very friendly, very supportive. We've met just a wonderful group of patients and their spouses out here, and have formed some just very dear friendships in a short period of time. I thought we would have lots of time, so I brought, I think, 8 or 10 books with me.
To read?
To read. I'm halfway through the second book.
Okay.
So we've had plenty to do, had lots of fun.
Were you worried about Jo, you being out here being treated, and what's she going to do all this time?
No, she was going to take care of me all the time.
So, what have you been doing while he's been out here undergoing all this treatment?
I've been hanging out with him a lot. many mornings I will go in with him to the hospital for his treatment, and then we'll go to the Drayson Center and exercise together after that.
Working out?
Yes.
Some of the other things you've been doing?
The weekends, we've had a chance to visit a number of places. We went to Indian Canyons, just the other side of Palm Springs, and it was just absolutely beautiful. We've hiked in the mountains. We went down to the Pacific Ocean. Had a beautiful day down there. So, you know, we've done a variety of things. We've had dinners with some of the other patients and their spouses. You know, as you know, Lynn, the Tuesday night there's a potluck dinner, which is a lot of fun to get together with people. Wednesday night there's what's called the support group meeting, but I would describe it as a chance for us to learn a little bit more about how to care for ourselves. Great educational sessions, great camaraderie. And on Thursdays, we seem to be at a different restaurant every week. So
we have a restaurant, our listening audience, we have a restaurant tour where we go to a different restaurant. But again, it's part of the socialization.
Right.
It's part of the healing process. You know, we say that the treatments take place in the gantry of the fixed beam line, but healing is a process.
Right.
So I mean, what's the motto of Loma Linda?
To make man whole.
To make man whole, mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally.
Right.
I mean, have you experienced that, the whole...
Without question. You know, men don't talk very much about their health. Certainly not about something as personal as prostate cancer and side effects. And yet having a group of people here who are all going through the same experience, who have a chance to interact, has made a world of difference for how I have felt about, you know, facing this challenge. And you know, I'd be less than honest if I didn't say, when I came out here and I hear people say, oh, you know, cancer, you know, it's good news, my response was, who are you kidding? It didn't feel like good news to me at all. But the reality is, this last 10 weeks have been one of the best times in my entire life. It's really been a special time, a chance to not only form relationships with people, but to get away from the everyday routine and really get some perspective on life in a different way.
Well, somehow when you hear those words, you got cancer, there's a time frame, you know, you hear that clock mortality ticking with clarity. And, you know, all of a sudden there is a time frame on this thing. So while you've been here, if I'm hearing you correctly, you've had time to think and reflect and maybe even prioritize.
Yes, I think that's right. You know, I would describe myself as being a type A personality, a fairly driven person.
Maybe a plus on the end of that.
Yeah, plus. And very focused on getting things done. And one of the things that I've taken away from this experience is a re-emphasis of the importance of people in relationships, and being willing to say, you know, at the end of the day, it's people who I touch, people who are important. And, you know, that's a big deal, and particularly with a grandchild on the way.
Well, you were talking about you've always had an emphasis, this list of 200 and 250, and it doesn't really vary too much.
Nope.
I mean, if you go off and you get a few more on. So you've always been what kind of a person?
Type A.
A type A, and you use the word doing.
Doing. Yep.
And
very much a human doing.
A human doing. And now you're thinking about being a...
Human being.
A human being,
yes.
When you get cancer, what difference does it make to you? Joe, he's had cancer. You've had cancer. How's it making a difference now that you've had cancer?
I think it's been a real blessing for both of us. Being able to come out here and spend 10 weeks together. I have never spent as much time with him as I have in the past 10 weeks. And it has
and you've been married for 33 years.
33 years, and it has been a joy. Just an absolute delight. And like Terry said, the friendships that we have made have just been so special.
And these are friendships that aren't going to end as you leave here.
No.
I mean, many people stay and maintain contact and end up taking vacations and, you know, trips together. And no, I'm glad to hear that what we've desired and what we dream for and pray for has been making an impact upon you.
Well, what you have designed has just really helped, I think. You tell the best jokes. But no, I mean, it's not only the jokes at
Sure.
the support group meetings, but all the social activities have made this so much fun. And the joy and the laughter, not only is it good for us, but I know it's helps in the healing process.
Part of the healing process.
really
there's,
is.
There's healing in laughter. And you know, I challenge people to go across the country and find a group of patients coming together that have cancer, that are laughing and having such a good time.
Right.
And it's part of the healing process. To be able to stop and reflect and realize what's going on. Well, we're coming down to the end of our time here. Now that you have cancer and you've been treated for it, what difference are you going to make? We've just got a minute or so left.
Yeah, well, one of the things that Joe and I have been talking about for years is a desire to invest in other couples. We're best friends, and you know we've had to work through some challenges in our marriage, like
Sure,
every
everybody
married
does.
couple does. But we really want to invest in other couples and help them on their own journeys, and so that's one of the areas where you know we want to make a difference. And I think also just taking time for people, taking time for ourselves, investing in our friendship, our relationship. We're best friends. And,
I can tell you
know,
are.
That's
I can tell
just
you
such
are.
a good thing. But taking time, what a gift to be able to give the gift of time to someone else.
Thanks so much for joining us here on Journey of Hope. And for our listening audience, I'm Lynn Martell with Journey of Hope. And Terry and Joe are another illustration of people that have shared their journey, that have been impacted by the healing ministry here at Loma Linda. For those of you who are looking on, God's got a plan for your life. Look to Him. He'll open and close doors. Thank you for joining us. Continue to remember us with your prayers and your support, and give God an opportunity with your life. He's waiting for you right now to open and close doors for you and lead you in the direction that you need to go. Till next week, God bless you each one.